Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members, and welcome to this planning and licensing, in this case, licensing part of the committee. Again, if you be sure when you're speaking, you've got your microphones switched on, and again, members of the public, if you're here for one item, you're very free to leave at the end of that one. Before I go into the agenda proper, if I could come around the table and people could introduce themselves and say in what capacity they are here. So I'm Edward Baines, I chair this committee.
I'm David Levitt, I'm a government officer.
I'm Karen Dolby, I'm Council Officer for Licensing.
I'm Savannah Parkinson, I'm a Licensing Officer for Rutland Peterborough Council.
I'm Will Kirsten, General Manager at Water, representing Andy Water.
I'm Sally Benton, Catering Operations Manager at Rutland Water, and I made the application for the alcohol.
I'm Diane Waller, and I'm one of the two county councillors for Normanton Ward, and this application falls within Normanton Ward.
Yes, good evening, it's Kenneth Moore, and equally so I'm the councillor for the Normanton Ward, and I'm representing the residents. Thank you.
I'm Elizabeth Griffin, I'm interested party.
I'm Leah Griffin, and I'm interested party in this kiosk application.
I'm Christopher Renner, Normanton Parish Music Chair.
I'm William Cross, I'm a councillor and I'm sitting on the Planning and Licensing Committee.
I'm Jeff Dale, and likewise I'm sitting on the Planning and Licensing Committee. Gordon Brown, member of the Planning and Licensing Committee.
Leanne McCartney, also a member of the Planning and Licensing Committee.
Paul Brown, Councillor and Vice Chair of the Planning Committee.
I'm Sarah Folger, Solicitor, Legal Advisor to the Committee.
Fine, thank you very much indeed, and we'll now move to the agenda as printed. So do we have any apologies?
Apologies for not chair, with me this evening, Councillor Andrew Brown, Nick Beggy, Councillor Raymond Payne, David Maxby and Rick Wilson this evening.
Thank you. Item 2, any declarations of interest? No? Thank you. Petitions, applications and questions, we haven't any specific ones. And so we now move to the main point, which is the application for the kiosk in Normanton Church. So if we can have the
Are you okay to bring the floor forward?
Good evening. Members of the committee have before them an application for a new premises licence, which has been submitted by Anglian Water Services Limited, relating to a premises situated at the kiosk near to Normanton Church of Rutland Water. Representations have been received from 2 local councillors and 5 local residents in their capacities as persons. There are no representations from any of the responsible authorities, nor any representations in support of the application. Taking into account that all parties have had the opportunity to read the report, it is not my intention to go through the report in fine detail, but to draw attention to the significant areas of the application. Paragraph 3 deals with the authorisations and hours applied for. After consultation with the applicant, they would look to amend the hours licence to sell alcohol. So from 1st of November to the 28th or 29th of February, the hours would be from 9 AM to 4 PM, and then from the 1st of March to the 31st of October, it will be from 9 AM to 7 PM. With regards to paragraph 6, the proposed conditions, the applicant proposes that the following additional conditions are placed on the licence. Firstly, there will be notices on the grass area denoting the boundary of the licensable area and where alcohol purchased at the kiosk may be consumed. At the kiosk, there will be notices reminding customers that any alcohol purchased at the kiosk must be consumed within the consumption area. All staff who sell alcohol at the kiosk will remind customers purchasing alcohol that they must consume it within the consumption area and it may not be taken outside of this area. Chair, unless I can be of any more assistance, will I ask you to commence the hearing in order that members can consider the representations that have been received and to take steps as are necessary and proportionate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. If there are any questions for the officer, if members would go first on that, then the applicant and then any of the interested parties. So members, is there anybody who's got a question for the officer? Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The objectives in the report, it says, are on pages 6 to what have you. Is that correct, or are there objectives on page 5?
Sorry, are you objectives or
The objectives for this, yes.
the full licensing bit?
Yes.
If that says it's on that. The applicant's proposed conditions regarding the, what do you please councillor?
Are you seeking clarification of the licensing objectives?
Yes.
Do you want me to set out the licensing objectives?
I'm just querying as to which pages they were actually on, as per this report.
Is that significant, or is it the licensing objectives themselves that you want clarifying?
I'm sorry, I'm just querying whether the report is accurate or not.
Chair, the question should relate to the application and the substance of the application.
So we will disregard the fact that it might be erroneous. Thank you.
Any other member who would like to ask questions of the officer? Sorry, Councillor Brown.
Yes.
Paul Brown, member, absolutely clear.
Can you be precise as to what we are asked to decide on? We either accept it as it is, the application is. Presumably, we can exclude from the scope of the licence certain licensable activities to which the application relates, or we can reject the whole licence application in toto.
That's correct.
So we are therefore looking to the ministerial guidance by virtue of section 182 of the 2003 Act as to making our decisions on those heads.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Chair, in order to clarify, I will set out the legal text and the position at the end of the hearing.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any questions to the officer? No, thank you, Chairman. Fine. Any of the interested parties who wish to ask a question of the officer? No, in that case, thank you very much indeed. So we now move on to the applicant to present their case, and again, there will be an opportunity.
Chairman, you've got your mic on.
Sorry, thank you very much, Councillor. Yes, the applicant will now present their case, and again, there will be opportunity to ask questions of the applicant and from the licensing officer and the interested parties. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that we, or believe that we've addressed the 4 sort of points, if you like, of the Licensing Act, and have stipulated how we will address those, and how we will manage those 4 points. I think that just for everyone's benefit in the room, it's probably helpful just to explain what we're actually trying to achieve by getting a licence on kiosk. First, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that we have only asked to licence the kiosk for alcohol. We haven't asked to licence the kiosk for live music, recorded music, any form of entertainment. And that is really driven by the fact that, one, we're not looking to create an entertainment venue that will create noise or disruption. What we are primarily looking looking to be able to do is to serve wedding guests who use Normanton Church on a very regular basis, call it a champagne reception or a drinks reception, if you like, as part of the wedding package that they're taking out when they use Normanton Church. And that's a very common thing to happen within wedding venues, and Rutland Castle is itself licensed for alcohol sales to 11 o'clock at night, and it's essentially a very similar operation to what we are delivering at Normanton. I would also just like to point out that the reason that we have given the area on the plan, so you should all have a plan noting where we wish to license. The reason that we marked the plan down to the church and away from the church, again, is to facilitate, really to facilitate serving alcohol to wedding guests, so that if they were standing next to the church, next to the walkway to the church, down from the church having their photos, which is often what happens, we'd be able to serve them their Prosecco or their after-wedding drinks in that area. So that is predominantly what we're looking to do. We would sell alcohol when the kiosk was open to members of the public if they wanted to buy it, but as the licensing application would suggest, I think beers and wine, really no spirits, and all of low strength alcohol. And our internal policy on site that we apply to our other licensed venues is that we will only sell one alcoholic beverage to a customer at a time, because that is what gives us control over making sure that people aren't getting intoxicated or getting disrupted due to the alcohol that we're selling. I guess finally I would just like to stress and point out that actually our product, if you call it that, at Rutland Water, is a family-friendly, family-orientated destination. We, in a country park, we work extremely hard to maintain it as a pleasant country park environment. We're very proud of the fact that it's a pleasant and leading country park environment, and we wouldn't be putting ourselves our business model at jeopardy by creating something that is going to cause disruption to our businesses out there. And I would also say that actually, by us holding the licence, Sally, myself, who are personal licence holders, other staff on site who are personal licence holders, and the business has quite a lot to lose if we breach our licences in terms of fines, heaven forbid, potentially jail time. None of us want to do that. And I think that our record of selling alcohol speaks for itself. We do it in our other cafes, which are licensed till midnight, and they're licensed for music and late night entertainment. The committee, I'm sure, is aware. We don't have complaints on that. It doesn't cause problems. There is no public nuisance associated with those operations. So that's really what we are looking to do and looking to achieve here.
Fine, thank you very much. Opportunity for people to ask questions. Members first. Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you may recall, Mr. Chairman, I was on the committee when we drew up the Rutland Water Plan with the District Council. And on that plan, we said that there'd be no commercial development within the boundary of the roads around Rutland Water. There has been some commercial development, and Anglian Water seem to be doing quite a bit of it at the moment, which to me contravenes what we'd said in the early days.
Chair, if I can just interrupt, any questions must relate.
I'm just coming to the question, sorry. The question is, what are the benefits that's coming from this?
With respect, Chairman, that isn't relevant to the licensing conditions. However, the benefits are, it's an enhancement to our customers, who primarily, as I've mentioned, are wedding customers. It's an enhancement to our visitors. A lot of people, general public, like to sit and enjoy a quiet beer or a quiet glass of wine in a country park. People do that having picnics. It's not uncommon. So really, this has given the benefits of it are enhancing, if you like, the visitor offer that we have and allowing people to enjoy a responsible, quiet drink without getting rowdy and disruptive in a beautiful setting.
You said about about the providing champagne or whatever for the Normanton Church, how are people going to walk down to the church with the glasses in their hand now? Because I understood that the curtilage of the kiosk was where the drinks were going to be.
So that's, if you look at the plan provided, that's why we've asked to put the plan, the licensable area down to the church, because it will then allow us to serve them either at the church or on the grass.
If they digress from that and go along the pathway, how are you going to monitor it? How are you going to stop them?
So there would be our glasses and assets, if you like, that we would be getting it back. So if you go, like any other wedding, you might have a drink at the bar. You don't then take the glass away with you. Remember, I guess, people coming to the church are only coming for the ceremony. We're not venue, so they're moving on somewhere else. So they're not taking that stuff with them.
Yes.
Same point. We also have a visitor services manager and their team that facilitate all the weddings. So not only would we have people in the kiosk working that can manage that, we also have a team working down there that facilitate the whole of the wedding. It's not actually a wedding reception that they use us for, not sure if you're aware, but we do the ceremony and they book 2-hour slots. So if they're getting married at 12, they arrive from 11, or from 11:30 and they'll have a 2-hour slot. So to get their photos in, it won't be an afternoon where they're going to be then staying on our premises to drink. They will be leaving to go to their afternoon or evening reception. So they're only on site for 2 hours.
Right, okay, thank you. Who's going to run the kiosk daily?
I manage all the catering sites on Rutland. I have Waterside Cafe that's already licensed and the DPS for that, and I have the Harbour Bar Cafe. I have senior managers in place that are all trained. They've all been briefed. They all follow the Challenge 25. We have a Challenge 25 policy. We have a refusal log in place. We didn't refuse anybody any alcohol last year for being disruptive, drunk and disorderly. And so they are all briefed, all the team are briefed and know what to do. But I am on site 5 days a week and Will's also a DPS as well, so
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you.
Councillor McCarthy.
Thanks, Jen. Just trying to get a bit of a feel for this. So you've got a 2-hour slot with wedding guests, and then they go into the church, get married, they come out of the church, people are milling around for 3/4 of an hour whilst people have photos or whatever, and think, oh, why would it be nice if we have a glass of champagne whilst we're milling around here waiting for photos? And then after that, off they go to the reception. So are you going to have waiters or waitresses roaming around serving alcohol, or is it specifically from the bar? And the other thing that was coming up was the fenced off area and how the signage, how prominent that signage is going to be, because it's not just, like you said, it's not just wedding guests, it's members of the public as well. How prominent that signage is going to be, and whether that's going to start to look a bit unsightly in front of Normanton Church.
Yeah, so the first point, yes, we would resource that, staff that, like any other wedding reception that you go to would. So it would be our team, Sally's team, who would be serving, clearing up, tidying up afterwards. That's what people expect at a wedding. That's sort of what we've got to deliver. With regards to selling alcohol to general public during the day, yeah, we would put wooden posts effectively rather than fence. Not proposing to fence it off, so it would be posts and signage that would say this is the limit where you can take alcohol if you have just bought it from the kiosk, and that's where, as mentioned by Darren, staff would be saying when they were selling you that drink, please stay within these areas, basically. We will decant the alcohol, we do anyway, so we wouldn't, if you bought a bottle of Peroni or something from one of our cafes now, we wouldn't give you the bottle. We would put it into a cup so that you have the alcohol in the cup, same with you're not left the bottle, and that actually stops a lot of people walking off anyway, because it's less convenient in the cup. And again, I draw you back to, we're in control of what we're selling. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say somebody won't walk out of the area. Somebody probably will walk out of the area. We will go and say to those people you can't, but they will have one drink. What they're not going to be walking out the area with is 10 drinks, because our internal policies say we only sell one drink to a customer at a time anyway. So yes, they might walk out the area with their one drink. If they were drunk or disruptive, we wouldn't have sold it to them. So yes, we will sign it off. We will tell people not to do it. We will encourage them to stay where they need to stay. But the other controls in there, you know, one alcoholic beverage at a time, decanted into a glass, not selling it to people who are drunk already. That in itself limits any sort of disruption outside of where we're operating.
And you're selling beers, wines, berries, champagne, any fortified wines, where are you stopping us?
Okay, so we don't sell any large bottles, so you couldn't come to me and buy a bottle of wine to share. We do I think they're 187ml single serve of white wine, rosé wine. So we then do a Peroni, which I think is a 330ml, and a fruit cider, which is 4.5 ABV anyway. It's lower, and we also sell a low alcohol and no alcohol Peroni as well. So we're addressing yourself if you were driving, but you still would like to join the party and have a beer, so to speak, but it'll be no alcohol. So with the wedding receptions, they would be the big bottles, but they will be decanted, and we do use the plastic glasses as well, so we don't have any glass on the park, again, just to prevent anything happening. So anything, you know, I don't have any glass on the park. Yeah, everything is decanted into plastic.
Thank you. And just coming back to when you're trying to get a feel for what you're trying to create. So we've covered the wedding guests and what we're trying to do there. Other members of the public who are using the park, one person said, oh, you know what, it's 6:30 on a Friday evening, I just fancy a glass of wine. Are you going to be providing seating there and someone so they can sit down, enjoy the view and have a glass of wine there as well? Is that the kind of thing that you're
No. No, it's not. It's the opening hours that we have are, I think they're in your notes, and I think they are from 9 till 4 in the winter. It's all due to the light because we're outside, so it's 9 till 4 in the winter, and the latest it would be is 9 till 7 through the summer, and that's because the park closes at 8:30. So I need to be done, tidy. All my team need to be off-site, so we won't be doing anything in the evenings unless we do a carol concert in the winter, and we've done those in the past, and that would be down at the church, and that would be mulled wine. You know, a mulled wine and a hot chocolate evening, and you know, it's a nice to have. So no, there is absolutely no plans to stay open till midnight, and there's absolutely no plans to stay open until closing time of the park. We will be closed an hour and a half earlier than the park actually closes.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Sally said, because the initial application did request a licence till 11 o'clock, and that wasn't, again, it's not because we're setting out to create a pub. As Sally's mentioned, we tend to do it at Christmas. We do a charity carol concert in the church each year, and we are doing it again this year for Rutland Hall. And you know, ideally, we wanted to be able to say if we had something like a carol concert or something in the church, then it would be nice to be able to sell somebody an alcoholic beverage whilst they were watching. Steve Bean, Pastoral Guitar is another type of event that we've held in the church in the past. However, we accept that there were concerns, and on paper it looks like, why are you trying to stay open until 11 o'clock at night? So we're happy to move those times in. And if we do events like that, we will put forward a separate event licence that says we're doing a carol concert and we want to be able to sell alcohol to these people in the church, which is limited to 120 people. So that's, you know, we have no, it's really not a problem to us to bring those hours in.
Sorry, I think you, just to address the seating area, I think we've got 10 benches down outside the kiosk with the parasols on, which say, you know, this is our seating area. Yeah, and just to reiterate what Will said, it is decanted, it's in one glass, so they are wandering up to the boundary to sit and have their picnic. They're not, you know, they're not taking, you know, huge amounts of alcohol, because we don't have that policy on our part in any of our Waterside Cafe and the Harbour Bar that are both licensed, and were licensed from when I joined and previously with previous tenants.
Thanks. One last one, before we give other members an opportunity. Why do you want to start at 9 AM? It seems quite early.
Do you know what? It's because it's when we open. Would we sell alcohol from 9 o'clock in the morning? Probably not. I think what we did was copy the times on the other licences that we've got. So if you look at the Waterside Cafe, it's licensed from 8 AM in the morning till 12 o'clock at night. Would we be selling alcohol at 9 o'clock in the morning? No. If that's a concern, we will gladly amend that time. We don't open the kiosk until 11 o'clock in the morning anyway, because there's no custom there for us. And yeah, so we're not going to open it, or we might open it for half run, but they want coffee. I think that's the other thing, just to put into context. If you look at the kiosk or go and visit it, it's selling scoop ice cream, coffee currently. It's currently, obviously, we'd like to sell alcohol, but it sells scoop ice cream, coffee, sandwiches, and cake. So it's by no means a pub, and we have no intention to make it as such. I think it would be best that by saying there's no music or entertainment or anything else on the licence application.
Any other questions from a member? Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the explanations. You started off by saying that a single person will come up to the kiosk and purchase one drink, which will be decanted from any bottle or tin placed in a glass. You then went on to say that you were then going to take large bottles down to a wedding venue at the church and distribute them amongst the guests. Now that is not in accord with what you stated originally, that one person, one drink would appear at the kiosk.
I think, Councillor, I think it's just a misunderstanding of what we were explaining. So if you...
There was no misunderstanding, I was just responding to what you actually informed.
Okay, so then we've just not explained ourselves very well. So if you yourself came up and would like to buy a beer, we would sell you one drink in one glass. If you are a member of a wedding party, then I think what Sally was trying to explain is, yes, we would then have bottles of champagne, and which is why we've got the area that we've got. We might have that serving station set up next to the church, but we would still then be pouring the bottles of champagne into glasses and handing them to the guests. But because they might have got off the Rutland Bell, for example, they might be standing at that jetty there where the Rutland Bell docks. That's where we could be serving them. A lot of wedding guests get onto the Rutland Bell and go backwards and forwards between Whitwell to Normanton, for example, as part of the wedding. So we would still be decanting the alcohol into a glass and giving the customer a glass. What we're not going to do, for absolute clarity, is say, here's a bottle of champagne, pass that around yourself. We're not going to do that. We're just clearly need to take the champagne to where the guests are to then serve it to them.
But each person would then not be paid for each glass of champagne individually.
No, well, the customer would have paid for however many glasses of champagne they wanted for their wedding.
So in fact, what you could be saying is that if somebody wanted to arrange a party down there, you would help to organise any such party with those sort of conditions.
Sorry, can you just clarify the question? I'm not.
If you're going to serve wedding parties, you may also be willing to serve other sorts of parties.
Yeah.
You already stated that you have the choral concert down there.
Yes, and so in that instance, as I then said, we would then do that under a separate event licence, which is why we brought the times in from going into the evening. So originally on the application, we said we would like to be licensed to 11 o'clock at night, so that if we had a concert or it's generally music concerts or something in the church, we could then serve to those people that were there. But we now
have you actually had special licences to serve people attending these weddings in the past?
So yes, wedding guests have done it. The Rutland Bell is the cruise boat that goes across the lake is also licensed. They do champagne receptions. If the customer books it through them, if they go on the boat, that's a very common thing that happens. We have done it for customers at the cafe at Whitwell, which is when a customer is going again to where they've used the boat to get
At Normanton Church.
No. So that they've had champagne on the bell at Normanton Church. So they've been on the boat drinking champagne. We've served it to customers at Whitwell where they've got off the boat and walked into our cafe there. We have done, I think we've had a temporary event notice in at Normanton once or twice in the past. There was a music festival there about Ostros. And I believe that was licensed. So yeah, otherwise we haven't sold alcohol because we haven't got.
So up until this particular application, no wedding organiser has asked you to serve alcohol outside of that church.
They haven't asked for us to serve alcohol because we haven't had a licence, but wedding parties have brought in their own Prosecco van or whatever it is, which those organisers have been able to do under temporary event notices and serve champagne outside the church.
Okay.
So have people been served champagne outside the church? Yes. Have we done it? No.
Thank you.
Opportunity for interested, sorry, Councillor Gordon Brown, missed you.
Sure, she's not always asked. Interesting. So the sole purpose is for wedding guests.
No, not sole purpose, but commercially, for our commercial business game, wedding guests is our primary target market. As I've said, we would then also sell alcohol to passers-by, but we do that already, and it's a nice to have because people like to go and sit in the sunshine in a nice location and have a beer or a glass of wine. You know, people like to do that. That isn't what we're not on the park. Is a pub. So do people buy alcohol from us? Yes, but that's not our primary. So at the church, primarily we want to be able to sell it to other guests. Would we sell it to other people? Yes, but it's not our main driver at that location.
Okay. Your existing premises have, at least like I know on the south side, you have an outside area where presumably people can drink alcohol in that area. Okay. I just want to make sure that's an unsales area. Okay. Around the site, you have signs which say no alcohol. So you've indicated to normal people coming along to Rutland Water, they should not drink alcohol except in your cafes. You've now just said that you allow people to bring in a Prosecco van to have alcohol. Presumably that's under a Thames notice, a temporary event notice?
It would be, yes.
Right. But that's contrary to your policy, which says no alcohol.
That is, it's a different environment, isn't it? So the signs around the water saying no the environment and are a clear indication to people who are coming to use the site essentially to get really drunk in the day. We have had problems in the past, as Councillor Waller put in her objection, of large groups coming out to the site from the inner cities to use it, as a place to get drunk in public. That's what that is managing. However, that alcohol isn't alcohol that's bought from us, and therefore that isn't specifically relevant to this application. What we are doing though is managing a policy of, if you're coming here with large quantities of alcohol as a member of the public and are causing disruption and everything else, we need to be able to say to those people, that's not acceptable and you can't do it. And operation on the ground, when you challenge people who are causing bad behaviour, the very first thing they say to us is, well, there's no signs. So, largely, that's what those purple barriers are about.
Next item is the accuracy of the map that we see on page 27. Is that the correct area that you're licensing this evening?
It is indeed. For further clarification, we have asked for the what three words for the boundaries, the three boundaries. Obviously, one boundary is the water. So when if the licence is issued, then we would incorporate the what three words into where the actual boundaries are. Three boundaries.
So the committee doesn't have an accurate map this evening.
You have an accurate map of where the licensable area is, yes.
Okay, so in that case, walking from the jetty to the church, people will have to hand their alcohol back and then get it back to them because they're about 20 yards. It's not in the area, in the red zone as far as I can see.
I believe that the map I've seen does cover the entirety.
Yes, sorry, I'm not actually following the question.
Right, if you look at page 27 of our report, I don't know if you...
I've got the plan.
Yeah, when you get to the jetty, you're talking about the top of the jetty, we're getting a glass of champagne and walk through. There's an area that's not covered by the licensable area. And I'm just questioning whether this is really an accurate map. Also, not all of the church is covered. The north-western corner of the church is not covered either. And so you're asking us to make a decision on an inaccurate map. So I should use my apologies. Therefore, I also question the extent of it to the east, to the west. The upside down. Looking to the west, it's a very extensive area that you're looking for alcohol consumption, when you're suggesting there's wedding parties of less than 150 people, because that's the maximum number, presumably, that the church can take. Well, this looks like an area that could take probably a couple of hundred, maybe 300 people. If you look at the area concerned, why are you looking for such a large area to be covered?
So, as I mentioned before, the area that way is to allow flexibility to serve people who are having their photos, etc. taken. So what they will do is walk all the way down towards those trees, because they want to have photos with the boat and the church in the background and so on and so forth. That's what that's for.
Right, I'm getting some clarity now. So it's principally for photographing, not for the consumption by the public, non-wedding guests. For wedding guests, for the public, who are not wedding guests, presumably you'll want them much closer to the kiosk and not roaming around to the far end of the licensable area. Is that the case?
We want them there, they can sit closer to it, they can sit further away. I mean, you might be sat yourself having a picnic at those trees and decide one evening or one afternoon that you'd like to get a beer and go and sit at the trees and carry on with your picnic. So that licensable area allows for that.
I'm just trying to work out, you said it's primarily for wedding guests, but it's a very large area for that, given you're talking about photographs. I just wanted to understand that. Thank you for that. There has to be no music, and that's no music from anyone, whether it's members of the public or wedding guests, external to the church.
So, there's no music is requested on the license application. So recorded music or live music are also licensable activities. And as I mentioned, we have licenses for those in our cafes already, the fixed buildings, which those licenses run till midnight. We haven't asked for on the application, it wasn't put on the first application, it's not an amendment we've made. We're not asking for music or entertainment licenses in this area. If we want, which would mean if we wanted to do something down there, like a concert, we would have to do that under an event notice, which is a separate application.
Okay, and you wouldn't allow any members of the public to have music in that area either?
No, so I mean, for quite a long time, we've discouraged people from barbecuing on that section of the park, doing our barbecues in the park. We discourage it and move people on from that section, again, because what we're really protecting is the wedding ceremony, and people get disrupted by barbecue smoke down there. And if you look, you mentioned purple banners, and actually it's in our park bylaws, they're also very clear that we don't want you bringing music into the outside environment, because it's a country park and it just gets disruptive for people. It's not conducive to the environment that we're trying to create. So we police that as well.
Okay, so there'll be no customary music as well. And then finally, yeah, I'm happy with that. I need some clarification from legal officer at some stage later on.
Thank you. Members, I think I haven't missed anybody this time. Are there any interested parties who would like to ask questions of the applicant? Councillor Waller.
Thank you very much. Your initial planning application to build kiosks was a replacement of a temporary kiosk on wheels, and the implication was clearly that it was going to replace that, which had nothing to do with the Normanton Church. If your primary purpose is to provide glasses of Prosecco or wine or what have you for people who are attending weddings, why haven't you simply applied for a licence for Normanton Church?
Normanton Church practically isn't an appropriate place for us to be able to serve alcohol out of. This licensing area would cover the church, which is why it does that. So if this was successful, we would be able to provide alcohol service in the church. But because of the way we run the weddings in the church, what we wouldn't be able to do would be to set up there and then clean the place down and sort the church out ready for the next wedding. The application area covers the church, which would allow us to serve alcohol in the church. So we could, if we were successful in this application, do that. But what we also are not going to do, and I feel that we have been open about the fact that we will sell alcohol from that unit to walkers or cyclists or whatever, under the controls that we put in place. We don't want to use the church as a shop for selling alcohol.
Okay, supplementary question, if I may, Chairman.
Sorry, I missed that, Councillor Waller.
May I ask another question?
Of course, yes.
In which case, and I do understand that it may not be possible to serve alcohol from the church, although you are indicating that you will be providing alcohol next to the church, so there will be a secondary sales point, albeit ordered in advance. But if your need is for supporting your wedding guests, and I can understand why you would want to help them, why are you putting out lots of picnic tables and all the rest of it all round that new site, which suggests it's somewhere people can go and drink alcohol and have a lovely time, quite irrespective of the wedding guests.
I don't, sorry.
Chair, I was going to say that any questioning should relate to this application and to the licensing objectives. If Mr Kirstein feels he wants to answer this question.
I was going to say, I don't think that putting benches out is relevant to the application. However, there have long been benches down in that location. Whilst it isn't relevant to the application, I don't see that putting benches for people to sit on in a country park is an unreasonable thing to do. And again, go back to the kiosk, as already mentioned, it also sells ice cream and coffee and is currently operating. There is there were lots of people sat on the benches having a very nice time.
Thank you. I've got one final question. One final question, if I may. And that is, you raised the issue of the weddings tonight, and I haven't seen it in any of the paperwork, so I apologise if I missed that previously. But it seems to be something significantly different from what I was reading about when I first read the paperwork. Bear in mind, I said that I can understand why you want to provide for the weddings and so on. But if it is primarily for that, and if the kiosk is, as was previously, ice cream, tea, coffee, etc., why haven't you asked for licensing for the hours when weddings are happening, that you've asked for a more blanket licence?
Yeah, so we spoke about the early times on the licence and the church's licence for weddings every day. We have midweek weddings, winter weddings, Saturday, Sunday, Friday, Thursday weddings all year round. Well, I will more than happily, gladly put in, we can remove the time so that we're not licensed to sell alcohol until 11 o'clock onwards, which is when they start really. We're not, as I've already explained, the kiosk isn't open at that time, and we wouldn't open it because there is no trade there for us to open it for.
And as I addressed the councillor earlier, we put till 7 o'clock in the evening because we are very much weather led by the weather, and my cafes do stay open because people like an ice cream, and so that's why we put that time in for the evening down there. But it's at least an hour and a half before the park closes.
Thank you, Chairman. You have staff on duty when there are weddings, quite clearly, and you've explained that very clearly. You will be selling alcohol, however, if you get the licence, at times when there are no weddings. Do you have the same level of staff outside the kiosk to make sure people stay within this non-fenced area and are only buying a drink for themselves and are doing all the things that you say you will ensure will happen when you've got your full complement of staff when weddings are happening?
Yeah, so obviously the kiosk is staffed with staff because it has to be. Are we proposing to put people standing on the grass area? No. Will we police the grass area with the staff that are in the kiosk if we need to? Yes. I hopefully you appreciate my honesty when I said will people occasionally walk out of that area? Yes, they will, but as I've mentioned already, we are decanting alcohol into one glass and selling one glass of alcohol to people who are buying it on an individual basis, if you like, at a time, which, when you go back to the licensing objectives of preventing public nuisance and crime and disruption, is a very powerful way of doing that. We're in control of the sale, so like
Any other interested parties? Councillor Moore.
May I, Mr. Chairman, I just have one question really for clarification as to the benches in that area. And correct me if I'm wrong, please. My recollection of the benches in that area is that they are park-type benches. Many of them are set on concrete plinths, and they carry plaques where they have been donated in memory of loved ones. They are not the cafe-type benches that we have in the papers before us. That is my understanding, and perhaps you could just confirm that one way or the other.
No, so that's, there's mixed benches down there, councillor. So we took the benches from the previous tenant. We took a lot of their picnic benches when the tenant who was there previously left. So there are picnic benches and there are parking benches.
Any other interested party with a question for the
I was just wondering about when you were talking about selling alcohol to the public and you give them one drink directly. Is this one drink in a certain time frame, or can they keep coming up and buying one drink, one glass of wine repeatedly over the time of the afternoon? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's one drink per purchase is the fair way of describing it. So could you sit there, have a glass of wine, come back and buy another glass of wine? Yes. Would we stop selling you wine if we thought that you had too much? Yes. So, but what we're absolutely not going to do, and well, don't do it now, and we already get moans and groans about it, is a couple or a family or something will come up and say, I'm sitting over there with the group, can I have 5 glasses of wine to take back to that group? And then we have to irritate them and say, I'm really sorry, you will have to come back here so that we can give you your glass of wine each. So it's about stopping you finish drinking and get someone buying, saying, oh yeah, that's for all my friends over there, and then actually it's just for one person with a glass of wine.
And can I just add to Will's, we very robust policy with the Just Buy One, but we also have an alcohol refusal log in place. So, and I think I used it once last year throughout the whole of the summer, just for your information, and that was through the Challenge 25, and I didn't have anybody purchasing any alcohol from any of my cafes that are licensed that were intoxicated. Thank you.
Mr. Renner.
Could I just clarify the music side of things, because obviously you're not applying for a music licence, it sounds as though you're having it. Can you explain what the situation is with that? I assume weddings can have music, but you're not applying for a licence.
So we haven't applied for an entertainment licence. The church is licensed for weddings, and I think as part of that licence, I would have to check the details, so don't quote me on it, but as part of that licence you could have like a classical guitarist or a cello player or something in the church for the wedding. What we couldn't do is get a band and put them in the church and say, we couldn't do what the bandstand in Open Close Park does and get a big brass band down there on a Sunday and say start playing music, or anyone else for that matter, without putting in a separate licence application, and that isn't on this application.
I feel the danger is you'll want to have a general licence, and then it looks as though you can have up to 500 people there for a music licence. That's the danger, isn't it?
Sorry. Can I just clarify the licence that we're referring to it's not actually a licence, it's a notification of an event, and that is, you're quite right, up to 499 people. That is a specific specific notification that someone is going to be holding an event containing licensed activities, including music, including alcohol, and anything else. They don't have to apply for everything. They can just apply for alcohol or music. So there is, on the application, there's no there is no application for music or any other regulated entertainment, including dancing. And if the temporary event notice was served on us, it is also served on the police and the pollution team, the noise pollution team. So if they had any concerns, they would raise it with us, and we would be back here for another hearing with for that notification. Hopefully that helps with regards to that.
Chair, if I can clarify on that, this application is for one licensing activity, that is alcohol, so music isn't relevant to this application.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
But surely there's music potentially happening in the church, which is in the licensable area, and you're not applying for music in the licensable area.
But activities in the church aren't within this licensable activity and aren't within the control of these applicants.
Well, that seems to be strange because it's within the area, isn't it? The church is within the area, therefore I would have thought it was covered by the conditions of the licence.
No, because it isn't to be part of this application. So any music emanating from the church is the responsibility of the church, which doesn't form part of this requested licensable area.
But it's in the licensing area.
But only for alcohol. So the church hasn't got a music license; it's got a wedding license, and there are conditions on the wedding license of which I can't quite remember what they are. So we still couldn't go and put a band in the church, for example, without doing a temporary event notice.
Again, I'm looking to the legal officer, but I'm concerned that we are drifting away from the focus of what we're here for this evening, which is this very specific alcohol license to this particular area and particular kiosk. And so, with respect to members and interested parties, I'm not going to let you drift off into musical impromptus or anything else. Councillor Cross.
Very kind of you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we have our papers in front of us, and on page 23, it says, live music. No licence permission is required for a performance of unamplified live music. Now, our legal officer has said that loud music is of no concern to this committee. I beg to differ if we read the papers, or am I misreading what is written before me?
Very possibly, Councillor Humphrey.
Page 23.
Chair, what the application for on this occasion is for the sale of alcohol.
I understand it is for the sale of alcohol, but does them, or us giving them the right to sell alcohol, then mean that page 23 comes into effect? And if it does not, why do we have page 23 in front of us? You what?
We're just double checking.
Perhaps the licence officer.
I do not license weddings. However, I believe that a wedding venue license, which is not under our remit, permits music at a wedding venue for the purpose of the wedding itself. This application is for, as the legal officer said, is for the alcohol. There, under this licence, there is no licence for live music or recorded music, dancing, etc. However, under the wedding venue licence, I understand, although I'm not 100%, that music would be allowed under that licence for a specific period, I guess.
So, therefore, is the information you've just provided, is that relevant to the granting of this licence that is primarily for wedding services?
No relevance whatsoever. You asked, or the interested party asked about the music at the wedding, at the venue. I hopefully clarified that to probably be under the wedding venue licence, not the Licensing Act premises licence.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Therefore, why do we have this information before us this evening?
What I would suggest, Councillor, I was listening, to what you were saying. There are a whole number of things which put the context and the background of the whole of the use, shall we say, of the Rutland Water and its surrounds in context. And I think it's important the members have that background. But when we're actually focusing on this particular application, that is precisely that background information not relevant to this application.
Chair, can we just go back and qualify what Councillor Cross's question is? Is your question in relation, Councillor Cross, to the church music, or is it in relation to this one here about recorded music and whether there be no required for that?
I would very much appreciate a definitive answer to my question, which is based upon the statements made on page 23.
So it no longer falls as a licensable activity that's going to change, hasn't there, with regard to playing music, but the applicants have indicated an intention not to play music.
No, yeah, so, Councillor, what you're looking at here is this is just information that is provided from the government, presumably, on licensing. What it's, we haven't paid any attention to this, but this is referring to the 500 people in it, which is, as Darren said, is where the temporary event notice would come in. So we would still need to put a temporary event notice in. So what in effect it's saying is, if you want to operate under temporary event notices,
well,
then this licence isn't relevant.
Well, I'm sorry to labour the point. I understand what you've just said, that over 500 people, you would need to get special exemption. However, here, it says, provided that the audience does not exceed 500 people. So you can have 499 people down there and have a jolly good rave.
If we put in for a temporary event notice. And I would also, whilst it isn't relevant to this application, Councillor, I would also like to point out that has, Aaron will tell me how long that has been in, or temporary event notices have been standing for. They're not a new, a temporary event notice isn't a new thing.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that is exactly my point. If it is of no concern to this meeting, why do we have the information in front of us to confuse us and possibly to cause me embarrassment?
I'm going to cut this short, Councillor Cross. It hate to cause you embarrassment. I think you have made your point about the relevance or otherwise of the background paper, but I'm coming back to saying what I said a minute or two ago, that we are here to consider this particular application for the sale of alcohol in a very specific spot, and that must be the focus. Now, just looking at the time, we have spent an hour. We are now on part 2, and I'm just going to look to my right at the moment. Each interested party now has the opportunity to make his or her case. Then my guidance notes here say the different parties participating in the hearing and members of the committee may ask questions. I'm going to rule, unless I'm ruled out of order, that the interested parties do not ask questions of each other. In other words, you make your point, should the applicant, the licensing officer, or any member of the committee have a question of a person concerned, then there will be that interested party make a statement, pause questions, if any, move on to the next one. Now, there are 5 people there. At the end of that, there are closing statements, and so each interested party will have the opportunity, if so wish, to make, I hope, a concise summary of what they have said. Equally, the applicant will have the opportunity at that point to make a concluding statement. At that point, I will turn to the legal advisor, and this is item 5, and small numerals in your papers. I will turn to the legal officer to make it absolutely clear what we are about to decide. And at that point, I will ask everyone other than the committee to withdraw while we actually come to a decision. That, I think, is reasonably clear.
Yes,
Thank you. So, Councillor Waller, after all that, as an interested party, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members of this committee, you are being asked to approve a licensing application for a kiosk at Rutland Water near Normanton Church. First, the site itself is obscured from the road and is therefore ideal for anyone wanting to make mischief. I wonder how the licensee will prevent crime and disorder, therefore, which is a point you must consider. You're told there are patrols of Rutland Water, that there are people on site and so on. But the water is some 25 miles circumference. Will the people who are ensuring safety be there at all times, particularly times other than weddings? Will the staff in the kiosk, I wonder, be trained in dealing with unruly people? Or will they simply, at quieter times of the day, simply be temporary employees such as students? One wonders how the staff working at the kiosk will ensure that those purchasing alcohol actually consume it within the designated area, given that from within the kiosk it is not possible to see all parts of the designated area. And similarly, how will they ensure that the waste disposal facilities are used? Because from the kiosk it's impossible to see the full extent. The applicant has already said that they will not have somebody patrolling outside at all times, which is the only way I can imagine that these things will be ensured. Secondly, how will those who sell the alcohol ensure it's not given to children? Again, an employee serving from inside the kiosk will not be able to see what's going on across all parts of the designated area, and therefore I believe we have potential child safeguarding issue, which again is an issue you need to consider as part of licensing. Thirdly, this is a triple SI site with a private wood immediately behind it. It is not clear how those selling from the kiosk can ensure that customers aren't behaving in an antisocial manner, particularly throwing rubbish into this wood, which is behind the kiosk, so it wouldn't be possible to see it from within the kiosk. And we also are aware, those of us who are involved in this ward, that we have had the odd case in the past of people defecating near one of the car parks when the lavatories were closed, and clearly there are no such facilities at this site. Selling alcohol at this site also raises other safety risks, as the path around Normanton Church is narrow and the water deep. It's not difficult to imagine people getting drunk and disorderly, or indeed drunk and not particularly disorderly, but nevertheless straying away from the uncool picnic benches, walking around church and falling into the water. And I am not clear from what's been said what the applicant is doing to ensure public safety in this area at times other than when there are weddings. We were made it, but it was very clear about what would happen when there were weddings. And so I would suggest that an open air kiosk next to deep water is not the right venue for a permanent alcohol licence, bearing in mind there's no fencing to stop people falling in. I also cannot grasp from what's been said and what's in the papers about what Anglian Water's doing to prevent public nuisance in respect of the neighbours of this kiosk. As I've just mentioned, there's no fenced area within which consumption is allowed. The opening hours, admittedly not as long as originally applied for, are still longer than the previous kiosk was open. And whilst there they might be shutting up at 7 o'clock in the evening. A summer evening starts earlier than that, and it's not clear how the neighbours are going to have peaceful use of their garden, which is essentially next door to this kiosk. How much patrolling will there be, and what access will the neighbours have to the senior staff of Anglian Water to call them if they've got a concern, or are they expected simply to call the police each time? And clearly, a refreshment kiosk on the banks of Rutland Water is not an unreasonable proposition. But does a refreshment kiosk need to sell alcohol? Rutland Water is used by cyclists, families on a day out and walkers. Selling alcohol will encourage none of these groups. So who is it designed to attract? This site is away from car parks and is secluded. It would need very specific security to ensure public safety and the prevention of public nuisance. But I've heard none offered tonight, nor in the paperwork, and therefore I would urge you to reject this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Waller. Members of the committee, any questions for Councillor Waller? No?
Chairman.
Councillor Gordon Brown.
Clarification, Chairman. Will we have the opportunity of posing questions back to the applicant based on the information that's been presented through the representations?
Well, it would be with the permission of the chair, because the applicants presented what they have to present, and so if the applicant may have questions, Councillor Waller. But if you're saying that you've got further questions,
I think it's
for the
points of
applicant,
clarification in relation to the comments that have been made by Councillor Wall.
so you want to ask further questions to the applicant based
Because
on,
of.
with the permission of the chair.
Thank you.
Licensing officer? No? In that case, sorry, I'm the applicant. Have you any questions for Councillor Waller? No? In that case, we move on to Councillor Ball. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And I will be brief, but I think it's incumbent upon me to set the scene on behalf of residents and villagers who are objecting, quite understandably, to this application. And there are two issues here. The first related to the residents and the villagers. Why? Why are they objecting? Well, it's simply because this application is one step too far. Rutland Water, as we know, is an extremely attractive area. It's highly popular for recreation. We have large fires in Firelow, etc. And it is understandable, commercially, why Anglian Water would want to enhance their management and their profits of water. I have no issue with that. But I think this particular application is in the wrong path. But there are major issues for residents, as in this case, as already said by Councillor Waller, where there are houses close by, not just the church. And there are major issues. And of course, officers and indeed members will be aware of historical complaints within within the water. We have major issues on parking, not only near the church, but on the Normanton Road and indeed other car parks. We have had loud music from equally large family gatherings in the area.
So the representations do need to relate to the licensing.
Yes, well, I'm just asking, I will just come on to that. I have 2 seconds. I'm just trying to set the scene as to why. We have had overflying drones, we've had barbecue smoke, and we've also had entry, and this is important. We have unauthorised entry to the park after hours. So if we look at this licence application, there are indeed four conditions. It has to be conducted in such a way that there is a prevention of potential crime. It has to be conducted, the actual area has to be conducted in an area of safety. It has to be conducted where it doesn't cause nuisance. And above all, and very importantly, there is an underage and a child protection, particularly with the sale of alcohol. There has been a reference made to the competent management of the cafe, which has alcohol, etc. But this kiosk is not a cafe. When a license is granted, and I think this with a general understanding, it's either in a public house, perhaps a large restaurant, or a hotel, and it could have a garden. All those areas, I would suggest to your members, are fairly well contained and can be controlled. And they would obviously have staff who are well versed in the selling of alcohol and would be in control and understanding when someone perhaps has had one glass too many. And I hear about the one glass application, but that can be used time and time again. So, because we are going on, Mr. Chairman, in summing up really, I think this particular application is in the wrong point. It basically does not meet the conditions that I've outlined, and I just cannot see how you are going to control a wedding party and members of the public congregating at the same time, because I see nothing in the application of actually separation and control. So I really would urge the panel not to approve this application. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ward. Again, members of the committee, any questions? Licensing officer, applicant? Thank you very much. In that case, Mrs. Elizabeth, okay? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. We are the third, fourth and fifth family generation of Normanton, and I fully endorse what has already been said in objection to the granting for licence to sell alcohol at this temple kiosk. Licensing the kiosk will inevitably increase the footfall on the grassland site and around the church. This is an ill-advised outcome for the following reasons. There are no on-premises. It is really a takeaway facility with a designated open area of grassland which is part of the triple SI site. Until about 3 years ago, the sloping area where the kiosk is now sited was grassland with natural drainage allowed by the substrate. A concrete platform and path were constructed to accommodate the kiosk on site. After recent heavy rains, the water was unable to soak away under the concrete footprint and caused flooding on the grass at the base of the path and junction with the main perimeter track. Picnic tables were moved, but the flooded area would be very vulnerable to compaction from trampling, making the recovery of the grass difficult. Conversely, any drought periods we may have could affect grass recovery on footfall compacted ground. This will in turn affect the myriad of organisms living on or under the ground. 2 large parasols have been erected in the picnic area next to the kiosk. We know from experience how unstable parasols can be in the strong winds we get around the reservoir. So when opened, there could be a safety hazard being so close to the perimeter track. The designated area is split in two by the perimeter track and can get very congested, particularly where the path branches off to the church. Some cars use the perimeter track to cross this area where they are permitted to use a small car park near the gate to grazing land towards the dam. Some cyclists weave around walkers at considerable speed without any warning, which can be quite intimidating and dangerous. With even more people wandering around, this is such an unsuitable and unsafe place to designate the consumption of alcohol sold through kiosks. Year on year, the Normanton Church area gets busier with visitors, civil partnership weddings at the church, cyclists and the like. The grassland part of the designated area for alcohol consumption would very quickly become far less visually attractive and less inhabitable for for living microorganisms that are so vital for the survival of the grassland. The kiosk, being a takeaway facility only, will result in more recycling and more litter. As a society, we should be trying to reduce both, not increase. Yes, larger unsightly bins can be provided and litter can be picked up, but this involves labour, vehicles and expense. There is a licensed waterside cafe at the nearby fishing lodge and a Normanton Park Hotel just along towards the dam. Also, the Rutland Bell cruise boat is licensed to sell alcohol on board. It operates between Whitwell Harbour and the jetty by Normanton Church, and the timetable allows visitors to spend an hour or two at either place. I would ask you to please consider my comments so that the Normanton Church area can remain preserved as a rural, sustainable and unspoilt location.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Whittam. Members of the committee, any questions for Mrs. Griffin? Thank you. Licensing officer, applicant. Thank you very much indeed. And then a further Griffin family representation. Thank you.
I think I'm the fourth generation. So thank you, Chair. So I would like to reiterate and read out for the Council the key reasons our family are objecting to granting the alcohol licence to the kiosk. The first reason is on the grounds of resident disturbance, noise, litter and increased likelihood of antisocial behaviour. We live with a young family in our house, which is situated metres away from the kiosk, which has now been resited very close to our property boundary. It is an isolated rural location, as you well know, and public consuming alcohol sold on licence so close to our family home we feel is inappropriate. Angle Water have made no effort, by the way, to consult to us about their plans with the kiosk, and this to us shows disregard to their immediate neighbours. The inevitable noise, social disturbance and increased littering issues, which are already pretty bad, we feel causes an unreasonable and has wider concerns around possibly drunkenness and associated antisocial behaviour. This is particularly true later on in the evenings when Angle Water Rangers are not on duty, or if there are, within the scene. The second reason is on the grounds of misleading application premise in an unsecured and unsuitable area. The application is for on-premises licence is not accurate nor is it appropriate given that this is a takeaway licence facility and there is no indoor premises. The consumption is open grassland, as has been pointed out, and is around particularly a historic building that has no barriers, but there are no barriers to either. So we feel that the idea that just a demarcated area with signs would be insufficient for the public, and the public will be wandering around. But to be fair, we ought to acknowledge this. But it continues for us to be a concern, as our property has been. People, even without alcohol, have been onto our property before. Third reason is on the grounds of wildlife disturbance, and the fact that this is a SSSI site. Ag noise and disturbance will undoubtedly have adverse and detrimental impact on many ground and tree nesting birds, both in our woodland and in the boundary which is right next to where the kiosk is. There seems to be a relative disregard by the applicant for the significant impact this would cause to the wildlife in the woodland and on Rutland Water itself. And it has been slightly disappointing to us that this hasn't even been noted. The fourth reason is there is going to be we feel that there is going to be inadequate supervision, particularly later on in the evening. As local residents, we have already suffered from some antisocial behaviour around Normanton Church, particularly during the summer months, often late at night when no rangers are around, and we certainly haven't been able to find any. We feel that if there is an alcohol licence granted to this isolated location, it is likely to to make these existing issues worse. We feel that there is a lack of range patrols late into the evenings, and we don't know who is going to stop members of the public having consumed alcohol, staying around the area and causing disturbance into the night, as this has happened before. The fifth reason is on grounds that better suited and alternative areas and facilities exist. Angel Water have acknowledged that they have 4 large
Sorry,
sites.
If I may give some advice at this stage, all objections need to relate to the licensing objectives. So any issues with relation to conservation are not relevant. And again, if we're any comments about hours beyond those applied for, but also any other licensable venues or the availability of alternative provisions are not relevant because long-term concerns such as those aren't relevant here. There would need to be something called a cumulative impact zone, which doesn't exist. And only in those circumstances would members be able to consider whether the granting of one more licence were to be a problem.
But I guess the issue I'm trying to make is the fact that granting a licence will increase the footfall to an area that is already quite isolated. It's getting busier and busier, as being pointed out by other people, and there is an issue around the conservation and the purpose of what Nottingham Water does, as well as provide water to people. And so I guess maybe I'm being verbose about it, I won't deny it, but there is an element of the fact that the other facilities that are available are busy, and there's no denying that the Normanton Church area is going to become busier if there is alcohol provided. It gives people another reason to come and enjoy the area and stay, and they do stay.
There needs to be evidence to show that it would be busier and that business would be problematic. But again, members need to consider the licensing objectives, which are prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm.
Okay.
Sorry, is that?
No, I have another 2 things to say. One is around health and safety. The consumption area submitted is located right by deep water, which is not guarded or fenced off. We have concerns around what would happen with members of the public who fall into the water or go into on their own accord. It's deep and dangerous around there with heavy reef build-up, particularly in the summer months. And the church is surrounded by loose rocks, which people already frequently clamber over. We have seen people swim in the area in early evenings in the summer. So I'm not talking about things that don't happen. We've seen it happen. And again, there's nobody there to stop that from happening. There's also an issue around cyclists who are drinking, who may be going onto the roads. And there's a whole series of other scenarios which aren't completely impossible to conceive. We would ask also, finally, how the council might consider, how this committee might consider how having alcohol being served around Normanton Church would look and reflect on Nottingham as a whole, because it is a representative of the county. It is on all the pictures. It's a historic building, dates back to the 14th century. We don't think that it would look particularly attractive with people wandering around with drinks. Fair enough, possibly with the weddings. There is a reason for that, but selling it to the public in this rural area seems inappropriate. And finally, I'd like to say that we feel that this application is, or we felt, it's a precursor to further development of the site. Although Angel Water may deny that, we don't feel confident. As it is, they have started out with a temporary kiosk, which has now become a permanent kiosk, and they've never consulted us about this. It is not unreasonable to believe that the alcohol licence could in the future provide a reason for further development, and if there are bigger plans for the site, we feel that it would just lose the rural and quiet and undeveloped charm. Thank you.
Chair, just to clarify, in terms of the last comment about any future intentions, members need to consider this application and can't speculate what Anglian Water may or may not intend to do subsequently. If they were ever to make a subsequent application, that would at that time have to be considered on its own merits, and any speculation isn't a matter for members doing.
Thank you. Any members of the committee with questions? Licensing officer? Applicant?
No questions.
Mr. Brenner?
I have concerns on the prevention of climate disorder. Excuse me. There is concern of break-ins to the kiosk to see it to stop. There have been numerous break-ins locally in properties that are actually occupied. This, in the dark, in the evenings, will not be at all visible for people. An ideal site. It's not a robust building, so people could well be wanting to get in. As far as the alcohol shall not be removed from the open area of the premises, I think that's a complete joke, really. I can't really see how they can realistically keep it in the design area. Excuse me a second. If there are people that are drunk and disorderly, and they go from arrive from the car park and then go walking towards the dam, the only way they're going to get back to the car is through the site again. And who's going to be able to enforce it? It's supposed to be an on-site licence, not a general sort of wandering all over the place, I thought. Public safety. The area includes a busy cycling walking track, reputed to be the most popular circular route in England. It's not acceptable to have the inclusion of this route in the in-licensed area. This conflict of use is a danger to the public. Deep water and rocky surroundings of the church have already been mentioned. Prevention of public nuisance. The site of St Matthew's Church has become an international symbol of Rutland. It portrays an idyllic, rural, quiet and serene picture. This is what the majority of visitors expect and are entitled to when Anglian Water and Rutland County Council have advertised the site as such. Potential noise and nuisance that could be generated should this application be granted is not particularly helpful. Protection of children. I would not be happy to take my young grandchildren through the in-licensed area that includes footpath, cycleway and church with the possibility of meeting drunk and disorderly behaviour. Is this the future of Rutland Water? Thank you.
Thank you.
The grant of the application is not granted.
Any questions for Mr. Brenner? No? Nothing from the licensing officer? Nothing like that. In that case, we move straight to the closing statements, again in the order in which the interested parties presented, and the applicant will have the final summary of his position. Sorry.
Just a couple of clarifications with the applicant, if you don't mind. Toilets. There was no mention of toilets at all. I think that's a relevant point in relation to the licence. No. So we don't need a toilet for a licence. That's fine, thank you. In terms of visibility, are you planning to have CCTV covering the area? You are. That's not mentioned in your application as far as I can see.
I believe,
It's in the supplementary document.
apologies, I forgot to speak. I believe Darren mentioned it in his initial statement. However, if we neglect it, then yes, we are planning to put a CCTV in place.
It wasn't on the application, it wasn't in the supplementary. And at the time of the application, when I spoke to Rutland Water, at that time they had no intention of actually putting any within that area. What I can say is the kiosk there's nothing in it, too much, but it's like a big shed with nothing in it, so there was nothing to say that they were going to have CCTV.
So they are confirming now that there will be CCTV covering the designated area.
Yeah, covering the area outside, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, Mr. Cross, Councillor Cross, sorry.
Soon to be Mr. Cross. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for reminding me and everybody else. we had a briefing on this, and I raised the matter of the responsibility of the SSSI. And I was informed that clarity for those responsibilities for the custodianship of the SSSI would be made clear if I asked the question of our legal officer.
It's not a matter for this application.
I beg your pardon?
It's not a matter for this application.
Well, in that case, I would ask on the legality of an SSSI being impacted by Rutland County Council granting this licence, which carries the heavier weight, the protection of an SSSI or drink. Thank you. That was a question to our legal officer, and I would like clarification, please.
Councillor Cross, can you clarify specifically in relation to this application? Members are here to make a decision on this application based on the licensing objectives. If ever there is any sort of conflict with any other regime, then that is a matter for the applicants to be aware of. If they have any duties borne in mind by anything else, or if the council does, then that doesn't factor into whether or not this can be granted. For example, if planning permission hadn't been granted for premises where they were needed, it wouldn't be a reason not to grant an alcohol licence, but it might mean that a premises couldn't operate if they subsequently weren't able to secure the relevant planning permission. Regimes are separate, and so the matter for consideration here today is this licensing application, in respect of which the licensing objectives are relevant, and I do feel that you're trying to derail it.
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm afraid my point was, why at our briefing was I asked to raise the matter at this meeting?
We're not going to have a discussion about this now, Councillor Cross. We've heard the application.
Well, madam, I'm sorry, but I was informed in front of other people that that question would be permitted at this hearing. I do believe that we have a responsibility towards the SSSI, and all I'm asking for is to which legal terms carry the heavier duty. Do we have a duty to our wildlife in Rutland, or do we have a duty to providing more drink? Thank you.
Councillor Cross, in respect to any questions, while we were doing training, what I didn't want to do was answer questions about this application, because the training was on licensing generally, so any matter needed to be asked here, and if it was that it couldn't be answered. If you want me to answer a specific point, I will look into that, but in terms of what matter is to be considered here and now, it is this licensing application.
What is upsetting to me, Mr. Chairman, is that I asked the question at the training, and I was told that an answer would be given here. Now, unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, I do listen to what our legal officers said, and I take them at their word. And I take a pretty dim view when we are advised to ask a question in this session, and I am then told that it is not relevant. If I had been told at the time that it would not be relevant, I would have been able to investigate the matter myself. Thank you, Mr.
You're
Chairman.
of course open to do that, Councillor Ross. I will rule now that unless I'm getting clear indication from the legal officer on my right, that the status of the SSSI would be impacted by the granting of this alcohol licence. And I take your point about what takes priority. Unless that is the case, then it's not relevant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate there's nothing to do with licensing objectives, but it's probably prudent to point out that this application lies outside the scope or boundary of the SSSI around water. So it is not in the SSSI area, it's in the recreation community areas and community development areas around Rutland Water.
Thank you. Right, so that end of that one, please. Right, we now come to the closing statements. Again, I would ask you to be concise, and I'll take you in the order that they came before. So it's Councillor Waller first.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I made a number of points that I felt there were too many questions unanswered in this application. principally around how the area, the designated area, would be managed to ensure good order, safety and child protection. There are too many opportunities for each of those areas that are pertinent to licensing to be flouted by irresponsible consumers of the alcohol. And there seems to be insufficient controls. We've mentioned the fact it's an open area, people can wander off, and that's been acknowledged by the applicant. We have a private house very close by. There's no indication of how their peace and quiet and their ability to enjoy their own property can be sustained. And we've heard from the residents that, in fact, they have had difficulties in the past without alcohol. So we all know the potential effects of alcohol. So I think it's not just a question of NIMBYism, if you like. We're talking about a rural area, a particularly secluded part of Rutland Water, an historic site with the church, and there just aren't enough safeguards in place to ensure that any sale of alcohol here would be done in a way that protected both those who are consuming and those who aren't indeed, those who are just walking or cycling along the path. And they are issues that need to be taken into account within licensing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gould?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The interested parties have set out a very clear range of concerns and reasons why this application should not be approved. And I would just simply say to the committee in your deliberations, you have 4 objectives to consider. It has to prevent crime, and you look at the building. I would argue it's not robust enough compared with the public house, who have cellars to lock away various products. It certainly will not be able to be conducted, in my humble opinion, in a safe manner. It is undoubtedly going to cause a nuisance, and it has to satisfy everyone that underage and young people and children are protected. And I think, unfortunately, on those 4 objectives, it fails everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mrs. Griffin?
I just say I think it's been completely covered by our councillors, thank you.
Thank you. Further Griffin representation?
I don't have anything else to add. I don't know what you said. Thank you.
Yes, likewise, the council, board members have stated the case very well, so we are objecting.
Thank you. Applicant, you have the opportunity to summarise.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I think in summary, I would dispute that we've not fulfilled the licensing objectives. I think we have a history of demonstrating that we do fulfil the licensing objectives. I would draw the committee's attention to the fact that no statutory body that's responsible for maintaining law and order, public safety, health and safety has any objections to this application or controls that we've put in place. We will amend the opening times as discussed, and again I would also just like to reassure the committee that again as licence holders, ultimately we have something to lose if it is later shown that this application is leading to, if we are breaching the conditions of our licence. I don't believe that there is anything legally preventing us from, that should legally prevent us from being granted this licence. That's certainly the position of our organisation, and we would challenge any decision that refused the licence on whatever grounds.
Thank you very much. Right, and I now ask the legal advisor to summarise, make any statements necessary. I think again it will probably be reinforcing what you've been giving us advice the past couple of hours. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for a licence, an on-premises licence to sell alcohol at a kiosk at Rutland Water. The applicants have said that they are both experienced licence holders, and they have explained how they propose that it will operate, which is predominantly to service weddings. They've said that alcohol provision is already going on in some circumstances, but they want to be able to do that via the kiosk. They've explained that they will glass passed on, it will be a one drink at a time policy. It may be that they acquire some incidental trade, but that isn't their primary audience. They have indicated that they wish to reduce the opening hours to tie in with the opening of the kiosk. They have said that the area will be marked out, and they, in order that people don't, generally speaking, drink outside of the licensed area. They've also indicated at the hearing that they will be installing the CCTV. We've had a number of interested parties make representations on the basis of the, in some cases, licensing objectives. There are concerns about crime and disorder. There are questions about the security of the alcohol and it being a target for crime. Those questions weren't asked of the applicant, and so therefore it's not known what provisions will be taken, whether or not that's a factor. There's been a lot said about concerns about increased use and noise and disturbance and so on, but that hasn't been substantiated by any of the those making representations. And again, members need to decide on the basis of evidence provided to them. They've been talking about alcohol getting into the hands of cyclists and so on, and there needs to be a distinction drawn between responsible sale of alcohol and the responsible usage of alcohol. And so any conduct, there was reference to conduct in car parks and so on, that falls outside of this area and outside of the control of any licensees. And again, decisions can't be made based upon speculation. Overall, members have a test to decide today, and where the matter has been referred to a hearing because of representations being made, the steps that you need to take as you consider appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives are A, to grant the licence subject to conditions mentioned in the schedule, modified to such extent as the authority considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives, and any condition under which are some mandatory conditions. You can exclude from the scope of the licence any of the licensable activities, but that's not relevant here because only one licensable activity is being applied for, so if it were to be excluded, that's effectively a refusal. You can refuse to specify a person in the licence as the premises supervisor. No concerns have been raised at all about any of the people running the premises, and then your final option is to reject the application. And again, Chair, any decision made must be based upon the licensing objectives for the promotion of. There are 4 of them, they are equal, and the licensing guidance which has been set out by the licensing officer in his report, to which you must have regard, which means that you must follow it unless you have a good reason not to. And again, in terms of representations, it's those that are relevant to the application that should be considered when you make your decision, and I'd ask that you give reasons for any decision made today.
Thank you very much indeed. Now I've asked everybody except 5 officers and members to leave the chamber, please. I'm sure it was better to like you're in the foyer.